There are some new details about Secret Wars.
Yes! 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 Yes!
These details give us our best look yet at what to expect from the overall Marvel story that the MCU is setting up for Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars. They also open up even more questions as to how this is all going to work exactly, not only leading up to Secret Wars, but during it and after it for the MCU. So I first want to break down all of this new information. Then I'm going to talk about my speculation on some of the questions that I have and also how Marvel could pull this off. This stuff sounds really, really fun, but it also sounds really confusing. And I have a few questions and concerns as a fan. So let's first talk about where this information is coming from. And that is Kevin Spoiler's uncle, who somehow is still employed by Disney. Yeah, so Paul from Heavy Spoilers talked about even more information that he has heard from sources about Avengers Kang Dynasty and about Avengers Secret Wars. And I recommend you go check out his video to get it straight from the horse's mouth and to make sure that I didn't screw anything up in this video. So the first thing that he talks about in his video is the fact that Kang in Quantumania is going to be the big bad Kang for the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. And this character at the end of the Quantumania movie is going to leave the 616 universe. He is going to go into the multiverse. And Paul says in his video that he's going to eventually come back to 616 to crush the world that Janet is from, because he really hates Janet because Janet kept him in the quantum realm for a long, long time, which kind of lines up with some of the pre-established leaks, but I have some questions about that, which we will get to. The main point, however, is that the Kang Dynasty will see this Kang Varian, who we first meet in Quantumania, returning to the 616 multiverse with a big old freaking army ready to basically conquer the planet. Again, all because Janet was real mean to him. Paul also mentions in his video that this movie, the Kang Dynasty, will be Kang's movie, much like Infinity War was Thanos' movie. It shows us a lot of Thanos' motivation. He has a ton of screen time, and you could argue it was literally a Thanos movie. And so I expect to get the backstory on this Kang variant, and from some of the lines that have leaked out from trailers for Quantumania, it seems like this guy, this Kang the Conqueror, has literally been through other multiversal wars or has defeated different Avengers in other universes. And so maybe we'll even see some of that in the Kang Dynasty film. But the basic plot of this movie of Kang Dynasty will be the main Avengers, who at this time will probably be led by Sam Wilson, Captain America. You'll have Captain Marvel, you'll have She-Hulk, you'll have Shang-Chi, you'll probably have Rhodey, Doc Strange, Spider-Man. You'll have the current Avengers team, which I believe is going to be established in a lot of the Phase 5 and 6 movies, which will also talk about Red Hulk and Thunderbolts, and so you could expect a lot more than just the Avengers. But either way, this group of superpowered people and heroes will not be able to stop Kang. And essentially, according to Paul and the source that talked to him, they will lose. Kang will beat them and essentially destroy Earth or take over Earth, and then that team of Avengers, who's ever left at the end of the Kang Dynasty, will go into the multiverse to try to get help. But another really fun thing that's brought up in Paul's video is the fact that the variant He Who Remains will also be in Avengers Kang Dynasty, but he will be on the side of the heroes. And this is likely a reincarnated variant of He Who Remains, because according to Paul's sources, this character will have not lived through any of these different events and has not gone through the multiversal war like the one that we met in Loki did. But regardless, that will take us into Secret Wars, which will see a group of Avengers, likely whoever makes it out of the Kang Dynasty, being sort of led by this He Who Remains Kang variant as they go throughout what's left of the multiverse to try to recruit other heavy hitters and help. Paul also mentions in his video that when he was describing the portal-like scene that Marvel Studios wants in Secret Wars with all these different heavy hitters from different franchises, it's not going to be a copy and paste scene with a bunch of portals opening and they all just walk through. Instead, what he's kind of saying is they want a similar scene where all of these characters are standing shoulder to shoulder sort of sharing the screen. It really reminds me of like a big splash panel in a Marvel comic where you have all these different crazy heroes, and there have been many of those throughout the year. And again, when you think about the fact that the entire plot of Secret Wars will likely see this group of heroes literally going throughout the multiverse and recruiting, and then ultimately fighting Kang on a battle world-like setting, it makes a lot of sense that they'd all just be there. They're not going to be popping out of portals like, I don't know. So there's some clarity there on what that scene's going to be like. Now, the last thing that Paul talks about in his video is sort of doubling down on the idea they introduced in his earlier video talking about Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and streamlining some of the characters from these other franchises, even like a Tom Hardy Venom maybe being in the 616 MCU proper post Secret Wars. And Paul again says that some of the Fox X-Men are being offered contracts, and if they take them, they will be integrated into the actual 616 in a post Secret Wars MCU. And that frankly is kind of crazy. I mean, that's almost crazier than them even doing Secret Wars. It's like boggling my canon mind. But okay. So that's a lot of fun information. We get some clarity. It's kind of Kang on Kang action. And really, truly, this movie, The Kang Dynasty, and really Secret Wars, if you kind of think of them as a 1-2 punch, that story seemingly more like Avengers Forever right now than it is any version of Secret Wars that I have ever read. And it's kind of confusing to me as a fan because, like, the incursions, they're awesome. It's such a cool concept from the Jonathan Hickman Secret Wars, which is literally one of the best Marvel stories of all time. And so it's so weird that Marvel Studios would cherry pick the incursion idea, introduce it in Multiverse of Madness, seemingly set it up as a catalyst for whatever's going to happen in Secret Wars, and then go the direction of just Kang on Kang, Avengers Forever, going across the multiverse to get a bunch of heroes to fight another version of Kang. That's not really Secret Wars. And look, I know some of you out there are like, that's just what Marvel Studios does. Like, Age of Ultron wasn't like Age of Ultron as a comic. Civil War wasn't like Civil War from the comics. And that's totally true and fair. It's just, as a massive fan of Secret Wars and as a massive fan of Doctor Doom, it's a little bit weird to me that we're not involving Doctor Doom and that we're not doing something that's like heroes versus villains. Now, I'm also a little bit confused here about Kang, right? Because something in Paul's video sort of contradicts what's currently in a big plot leak that's kind of being spread around on the Marvel Studios spoilers subreddit, okay? So this has to do with Quantum Mania. Now, it's rumored that in the movie, Janet is really going to piss Kang off, and then Kang's going to say, I'm coming to your Earth first, lady, and I'm going to destroy your Earth because you had me down here waiting all this time, and I basically hate you. But in Paul's video, he's saying that Kang is going to make her universe, ours, the 616, sort of like his last stop, and this is also because he hates her so much. Now, something kind of in my mind that just made this make sense was like, well, maybe Kang initially wants to go into 616 first, but this is when he has this massive army. I actually think it's possible that he no longer has his army, right? So that his army gets like mostly destroyed. And maybe he escapes in the multiverse with his chair/ship, but he doesn't have an army. So he's not just going to go right into the 616 universe without an army, especially now that Janet's out and kind of knows that he's a big threat. So in my mind, it's like, okay, well, Kang then would have to go around the multiverse, rebuilding his army, maybe even fighting against other variants of himself and co-opting the armies that maybe they have. And herein lies one of my biggest hopes for Secret Wars. I really hope that Kang, when going out to rebuild his army, is going to grab up some variants of awesome Marvel characters. One thought I had was that he could do sort of like the Cabal, grab up a version of Thanos, grab up a version of Red Skull, grab up a version of Doom, and sort of create this cabal of villains to fight against the Avengers in Kang Dynasty and also in Secret Wars, because one of the awesome things about the old 80s Secret Wars was having villains versus heroes. All of Marvel's dopest villains versus all of Marvel's dopest heroes. And even Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars has a lot of that same energy, because you do have the Cabal and you do have this last vestige of the heroes of 616, and then you have all these sort of Elseworld characters kind of in between, but you still get a lot of that flavor with the villains versus the heroes that exists in that Secret Wars story. It's a big part of why those events were so popular. So it would be weird to me if it was just Kang and some crazy like army of nobodies that we don't care about whatsoever. I think instead he should recruit a bunch of villains perhaps, or even a bunch of heroes. Like, it would be sick if Kang went around and grabbed up a bunch of dark Avengers, like that freaking Tom Cruise Iron Man that we were robbed of in the Multiverse of Madness, and other characters like that. Maybe it's 838 itself. Maybe Kang goes to 838, goes to a time from before Wanda is there, and brings them out, tells them that Wanda would have killed them all, and then they're extra willing to help Kang in order for their universe to be saved, or something like that. Something involving fun variants and more than just Kang fighting against the Avengers would be awesome. I'm also kind of confused about He Who Remains as a good guy, but he doesn't remember anything because this is his first time through the timeline. I don't know. Like, that's fun, right? I like the idea of a good variant of Kang leading the Avengers, very Avengers forever. This is something that's kind of been done with Kang many different times. You know, Iron Lad is a variant of Kang that wants to defeat him. Sometimes Kang wants to defeat Mortis and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So that kind of works for the movie, but I'm just confused as to where that variant comes from. Like, is the He Who Remains variant from 616? Because the other Kang can't be, right? Because he's killed the Avengers so many different times, and it feels like maybe he's already been through the multiversal war. Now, the original He Who Remains absolutely could not be from 616. I mean, I don't know. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm confused about all these Kangs, and you're doing multiversal stuff with the time travel stuff. It's just getting really freaking confusing. And I guess lastly, I'll just say that the idea of bringing a lot of Sony characters just into the MCU proper, it sounds really fun, but it also sounds like it could confuse mainstream audiences. And I don't know, like, I just want the X-Men, frankly. I don't really want to have to wait until after Secret Wars to get like a hybrid X-Men with some familiar faces from the Fox franchises, but also like new versions of the characters. Like, that's kind of going to be a hard sell, in my opinion. I'm also confused about the old Marvel characters like Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man and Chris Evans as Captain America. Is Secret Wars going to somehow bring those characters back in permanence as well? Because I wouldn't hate that. And to be honest, I'd almost feel like we were robbed of that if we somehow get other Fox X-Men characters back, but then don't get Robert Downey Jr. back. I'm probably just being overly critical and picky as a big nerd and fanboy of the MCU, but all I'm trying to say is, like, streamlining and bringing certain characters into the 616 is just kind of a confusing premise. It feels like something like of a soft reboot, which I wouldn't necessarily want. Like, to me, it's almost better if Kang Dynasty happens, it's really crazy, Secret Wars happens, and then you sort of reset so that, in a sense, as far as the canon of 616 is concerned, none of that stuff happened with, like, Kang and the multiversal war. And then you just kind of carry over all of the consequences of all of your stories and connective tissue that happened before Kang Dynasty into the MCU after Kang Dynasty. But once you start introducing this soft reboot idea, I begin to question all of the canon that has come before. Is anything that I invested in and watched as a fan actually relevant to what's going to happen next in the story? But damn, this stuff sounds ambitious. I mean, they are really going for it with these next two Avengers movies. And again, there's a lot of confusing aspects. I'm sure Marvel's struggling with some of these ideas and concepts themselves. The movies are far way out, and so I think there's plenty of time for them to properly build towards these big events and to sort of bring us along as the audience so that we understand what's going to be happening in these movies and that we understand the MCU that will happen afterwards. So that's it, and let me know, of course, if you have any thoughts about this in the comment section below. Smash a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this channel and subscribe to our gaming channel so you have a chance to win the dope nerdy thing that we give away each month. And if you want to watch more, why not check out this video I recently did about the big changes Kevin Feige is making to Phases 5 and Phase 6.